Okay, we're into the new season. Academy Football Network podcast. And we've got, it's just a host of different types of people. Yes, in the football industry. Yes, helping support the development of our young athletes, our young people. Today, we have Emma. We're talking about psychology. We're talking about head of player care. We're talking about education, working with the first team, transitional stuff. We're even talking about a lettings manager. We're talking about all that different stuff that has got us to a place where player care is. So thank you for coming. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So with all that in mind, I probably want to throw out the first question, and the first question will probably be, where are we with player care at the moment?
At this point, a lot further than where we were. It's more defined. It's been given its ownership in terms of it has a dedicated place within every academy set up. Way back when, and I guess even up until now, there's a player care department within every Premier League club, but that might be under a different name, where obviously back then it was welfare, pastoral care, but that still exists now. So really further on from where we were, but still finding its feet to be able to have the dedication that it really does require.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to agree with you. Yeah, often the reflection of that kind of pastoral support for young people has been, when people talk about it, you generally think they're talking about 10, 15 years ago. And I guess a part of talking to you today is that kind of understanding of what goes on now and the good work that goes on now in terms of the environment. Yes, if you talk to the whole 72 clubs and not just the Premier League clubs in terms of supporting the young people, there probably is a disparity. But hopefully through sharing good practice and just talking about the environment, people get to understand, and there'll be parents and there'll be coaches and there'll be just people involved with the young people that will want to hear that as well. So it's really nice to have you on, so we can start talking about that. What's your thoughts? Is it just a club thing, or is it just in terms of player care and the disparity that you might have in the environments?
Well, I think it differs from every club, every situation. Obviously, every individual that I come into contact with that does a similar role to myself, it looks very different, and that's the issue. You can't put player care delivery under a strict framework. It isn't like that, and actually that was one of the biggest challenges for me coming into my role as the player care manager when the department was formed nearly 3 years ago, that there is no guide to what you deliver. You have to make it specific to your club, and actually finding your feet in terms of what the players need, what the staff require, what the multidisciplinary team expect of you and management. That is kind of the smaller steps to moving towards knowing exactly what you should be delivering. I mean, what I oversee will be completely different to what a player care manager will oversee at another Premier League club. And, likely down the league, as I mentioned before, there are individuals that wear completely different and multiple hats. So potentially welfare, education, safeguarding. There's obviously an element of duty of care as part of all of those roles. But yeah, I think it's a tough one to be able to really present a clear player care structure and what that should look like in every club.
Yeah, and also clubs will work differently because there'll probably be different types. A London child will be different to a Southampton child, which will be different to a Manchester child, which will be different to, as you can, the list can go on. So yeah, it's understandable that it will be slightly different. But I mean, I guess the flip side of that, for people who work in the environment, they go, well, it's different, but is that good? Is it good in terms of the framework that you was talking about? So it would be something that maybe longer term, it starts to get like if you're the academy manager, you know exactly what your kind of criteria is. Yeah, you go, I'm the academy manager, this is kind of my job spec, and this is what I'm responsible for. And whether or not that helps new people coming into the environment, because it is a growing area, which is great. I'll be honest with you. And I know from my own experiences working in that kind of field and looking after the child pastorally. So I think that's really great. And yeah, there's good work happening where you're at. So yeah, really good.
So what does the team look like at Southampton? So the player care, I know we're looking at different clubs and they're all slightly different, and I think that's really good because every club has its own needs. So in regards to like the Southampton setup, what's it look like from your point of view for like the team and etc.?
So I oversee the whole department, and then I have a professional player liaison officer for dedication to the first team and that delivery. And then I have a player care officer for the academy, and then also an assistant player care officer that assists the player care officer. And their delivery in terms of player care provision, the difference between player care and first team and academy is very different.
Yeah.
I'm also lucky enough to have a player care officer for the women's and girls teams, which is a casual role. But again, as I've mentioned, that delivery looks very different.
And how does that delivery look different from the first team to the academy side? How does that look?
So really, it took me some time to be able to establish the needs of the players, and I've spent most of my career in the academy. That's my, that's my ultimate. I can do that with my eyes closed. So I had to take the time to be able to work out what I needed to deliver from a first team point of view. That will always change as you're having new players come in through that transition, new acquisitions. You need to be ever developing what you're doing, what you're delivering. So I would suggest that really my professional player liaison would obviously be on hand all the time. The nature of the role in player care is that you are available all the time. That's the only similarity across the full team, that actually it is a 24/7 job.
But is it more than sorting out parking tickets and all that kind of thing? I know a lot of people think all that person does is that parking tickets, and if something goes wrong, what is there like more like proactiveness and all that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. I think obviously the interpretation of player liaison would be that you just do everything for them.
Yeah.
And I absolutely do not agree with that. And again, it's my academy roots coming back to me, but I would never want to have academy players come through the system, through the pathway, get to the first team, and for them to be completely incapable of being a well-behaved adult that could pay their own parking tickets. So where possible, we try and instill learning, and actually, there will be challenging times, and actually if an issue is causing more stress to the player and it will eventually lead to concern which will impact on training performance, then we will support them, potentially do that for them. But I think it's a very fine line between educating, being proactive when necessary, and then also acting on their behalf, because we still have a duty of care, whether they're first team or academy, to upskill them to be capable. I'm sure we'll go on to it later, but a lot of the concerns over players retiring, if you're not providing them with the soft skills and skill set to be able to be a capable member of society, then you're not doing your job properly.
Yeah,
I remember a conversation with you a while back, and I remember a similar conversation around parking tickets, and it was like, I remember you saying, I'll help them learn how to do it, but I'm not going to do it for them, which I think is insightful in terms of the environment and how you're helping them. And I mean, you're not coming across rude or like, I'm not doing it for them, no way. It was just, well, there'll be a time in their life where there won't be a player liaison person, and they need to probably learn how to do these things, or it will feel like a big jump for them when they're a grown adult and they got to do their first parking ticket. It's like, hang on a minute, I've never done this before. I never had to go to the bank and do my banking stuff. Someone's always done this for me. I've never had to, all these things that maybe have been taken care for them. do we help them in the long term? I'm not too sure. So it's interesting to hear that as well.
But it's nice to hear that Em says that the boys that go through the academy, you've obviously upskilled them in order to go and play for the first team. So the last thing you want to do is then they get there and then all of a sudden
they're not ready.
They're not ready. But also the boys that have gone through the academy, they can then maybe educate some of the boys that haven't come through the academy, or some of the young men, or some of the older pros that are coming into the environment. It then becomes a bit more of a holistic,
it's a cultural thing.
It's
a cultural thing.
Development team,
Yeah,
for sure.
no,
Definitely. You'd hope that if you instill the learning, you encourage that environment where people don't feel entitled, that you're not going to do everything for them, that, you know, they'd learn to do the same for their peers, their teammates.
Yeah.
There is that culture at Southampton. So it's not alien.
Yeah.
It's not like, I'm not going to help you. That's the end of it. It's a learning. And luckily, hopefully, I'm well received, that doesn't go down the wrong way.
Yeah. No, I think that's excellent. And I know you talked about soft skills, and we're talking about the integration to first team football. So often, obviously the first team manager will want some of the younger players to come up because they've shown the technical skills, the tactical skills, psychological skills. But some of those soft skills, how does the club help those players transition across to the first team? Because it's a whole different ball game.
Definitely. I think that was something that I took on myself after quite some time observing the transition from B team players to first team. Those academy players that I had spent so much time with in the years in my time in the academy to then be in first team, it was probably like a natural maternalistic thing where I would put my arm around them and make sure that they were projecting themselves professionally, making sure they did everything they could do to fit into the first team environment. It can be really intimidating, and actually all they want is the best foot forward for that start, to make the best impression for the manager and the supporting management staff. So I felt like I attempted to act like the buffer to ensure that anything that wasn't quite well received was dealt with very quickly, whether that's me taking them to the side and just saying, how are you getting on? Let's have a conversation. Like, are you managing? Not anything different to what the team would do with the academy guys or the women's and girls, but it was more so to generate conversations where I familiarise them with the environment that they're expected to be able to thrive in. So
what would be some of those just a couple of examples of those soft skills, or something that you go, you need to maybe do this is what they're expecting in this environment, it's a little bit different, or it's the same? What are some of those examples?
It could be really simple and actually really, unfortunately, at times unavoidable if a player seems to be less professional because they're 2 minutes late to debrief, or they're 2 minutes late to see the physio. Those 2 minutes, they add up. And the professional team surrounding the first team, you know, there's an expectation of the players to be there for that treatment. So whilst it wouldn't happen frequently, you do hear when there are things going on where it's not quite as expected of an academy graduate. And, you know, again, no malicious intent, just sometimes it happens. Things slip because you're not used to keeping up appearances constantly. So obviously being on time, remaining professional, not messing around, you know, keep being professional in your social life as well. No issues with rentals, independent living, all of that encompasses a true professional in the first team. And even the way that you behave in the first team canteen, there's eyes everywhere. The chef is watching what you're eating, making sure that you're making the best out of, you know, your potential. That includes what you're putting into your body. So if there's a player that's particularly picky, the first team chef will notice. We've got, you know, nutritionists that stand to assist the lads, to help them, you know, if there's a specific plan that they're following. And actually, if a player is, you know, saying he's a bit picky, I don't like that, then, you know, we want to ensure that we're giving them the best support we can. So again, it's a conversation to say, this is what's expected of you. And that might not necessarily always come from me. And it's not a telling off. It's just a guidance. Absolutely. This is how you make the best of this situation. Take the opportunity. Feel your body the way you should. Sometimes it might be that I rely on another player as a type of mentor to be able to give them the information from their point of view. You know, I'm boring. My voice gets boring after a while. I'm just naggy. But actually, if it's coming from a teammate, they want to impress them as much as they would do the manager,
Of course,
and get them on side. So,
especially if it's someone who's gone through the journey and has graduated and been successful in the environment, and then they go, do you know what, I want to be the next him.
It's funny, most of the time I don't even have to ask a player to do that.
Yeah.
They keep up with the younger lads, the ones making their way through their debuts. The players are great, all of them. They'll kind of advise them on what they should and shouldn't be doing. So I guess as much as I'm saying that I'll take them aside, a lot of the work's done for me through the team.
I guess if you've done it for the time that you've done it now, it's embedded, hopefully, and the culture starts developing again. Where you go, do you know what? I've got 4 that's gone through. Those 4 are now 5 years in as first team professionals. They will know to talk to the next guys going through, and then hopefully it just filters down, as long as obviously boys get graduated, which is great. Just thinking. So the integration, that kind of feels like it's been something that you've looked into and gone, that's a support. Did it feel like when you was in the academy, was that support still there? Because I just think about the environment, and they've been quite successful in having young people go through to the first team, or is it something that has just been new?
Yeah, I would say I probably have learned my management of integration from my time in the academy, because the multidisciplinary teams are so close that actually it's almost impossible to not be able to communicate and have the conversations that you would need to be able to identify areas where the player would need more support or development in. And actually having that relationship with the staff has been the most important thing to what I think running a successful player care department, meaning in the fact that I can go and have a conversation with a coach and I won't feel like what I'm saying won't be taken seriously or of high importance. I can have a conversation with the academy director and know that he'll listen to me and take on board what I'm saying. So actually those relationships are key.
I guess that's important as well, and that sounds great as well in terms of your environment, and where you want to feel like each department has got an equal standing and linked together in a way that you're a chain really, and you go, listen, we need that part of the chain to be as equally valued and worked with and supported in order for us all to work. Because you can sometimes feel in other environments that it's not, player care is not of an equal standing like that. So that's nice to hear, and hopefully that will filter through, because yes, we hear the kind of the issues that come through when it's not like that, to be honest, in terms of pastoral support, which I think environments are being much more conscious about now. Definitely over the last couple of years, I feel like environments are being conscious about, and rightfully so. So no, that's great. That's great to hear.
And we're coming up to this time of the season now where pre-season's coming to an end. Boys are now going out on loan. Sometimes you'll see a boy from Southampton who might have been there from 8 to 23, and now he's going to go out on loan to, let me pick a club. Let me think of an interesting club that's far away. He's going to...
Where's he going now?
Where's he going? He's going Aberdeen. I'll send him up to Scotland.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think sometimes, again, in the media and the press, sometimes it gets a bit of a bad rep in terms of the boys just go and then that's it, and there's no kind of support around them or no communication between the clubs. What do you guys do in terms of ensuring that person, when they go to the new club, is able to hit the ground running without having to kind of go through potential issues?
It's kind of an informal process, more instinct. Probably does need to be formalised. So obviously my first concern is the player and how they're feeling about where they're going. Likewise, the parents. How do you feel about him moving to Aberdeen?
Yeah.
Wrap up
warm.
So really those initial conversations, like, you're happy with your move? Is this the only option? You know, finding those initial feelers for their intention. Obviously, most of the time it's usually positive, but that's the starting point. And then from then it's making contact with my equivalent at the club that they're moving to, finding out as much information as I can about the type of care that they'll receive, because I'm very mindful that whilst we offer a well-rounded support from my player care team, what I wouldn't want is that to be a massive jump elsewhere. And whilst my contact with the player will continue, I can continue to offer that support. It's obviously prep for the player and their family to say, actually, they may not have an equivalent to me in player care, but actually you can rely on your club secretary. They'll organise your accommodation. And that would be the next thing for me. I want to ensure that I know where he's going. So would it be host family, independent living, a lodge? Will he have to source his own? If he's sourcing his own and I don't think he's prepared to do that as a professional, then I'll offer my time. Let's find somewhere. I'll give him some options. But basically everything I would usually do for a player coming in as an acquisition at whatever point, in their career, I would try and do the same with their exit. So ensuring that they feel comfortable, supported, and then obviously checking in on them the first couple of weeks of training, leaving them to it, because, they always know that open communication is there, and then just generally checking in every now and again to find out how they are and if they need anything.
Yeah, no, that's really good to hear. And then when the boys, if there are any issues, let's say for example someone's young and they say, look, I'm really, really not liking the food here, for example, or the accommodation's really bad. Can they always come back to the club to come up with any issues, or do they have to kind of deal with it at the kind of new kind of loan club?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, I'm more than happy to always have those conversations. The good thing is that we actually have a really great recruitment department. There's like a player pathways manager. He does excellent work. He coordinates the overall loan. So it won't just be me that will be speaking to the player. It will be our psychologist. And actually that individual will find out which is the best bubble of staff to be able to support that player during their loan. So it might be me having those initial conversations, but it will then be a question of who do I pass that information on to? What's the best way to get the best action out of this situation? What would make the player feel most comfortable about this issue? Do I touch base with his parents? Do you think you have concerns about how he's feeling about X, Y, and Z? Do I talk to my counterpart at that club? Likewise, if it's...
What is the general... Sorry to cut you.
No,
what is the general vibe with that? Do players often go, do you know what, I'm gone, but I'm starting a new life and I want to try and make this work and be as much... And it's almost like I'm leaving my nest and I'm going to fly away and I want to try and build my own little nest. And is there a case, do they go... I'm trying to not use Emma or the club as much as possible to show them that I'm being successful on my loan and I'm growing up?
I think there's an element of that. And obviously, unfortunately, if it is a release, then they want the opportunity to move on and start afresh. We completely understand that. But knowing that they are going to be part of the alumni, part of the support programme in the future, we don't cut that off. But I'm pretty sure from a player point of view, they'd rather be able to make this their new chapter. Take on the opportunities with the new club. They usually do work most of it out themselves. There's rarely a player that will heavily rely on me unless it's an accommodation issue or unless something's gone wrong. But yeah, majority of the time that contact just tends to be, hey, how you doing? It's Emma again.
I'm fine.
Don't forget me. No, not really.
So what does that look like though? So in terms of like when the boys get released, and again we looked at the stat in the newspapers and all this some of the negative press, and I think sometimes I definitely think the Premier League, but also clubs, they don't really celebrate or share some of their good practices in regards to when boys are released from the system. Of course, you're going to get some boys that the system fails and they're going to find it really, really tough leaving. But there are loads of boys as well that do land softly and they do able to kind of move on quite quickly. So in terms of like the exit strategy, what does that look like from a boy that's leaving let's say at the professional development phase, so you're looking at under 18s, the B team. What does that look like when that young person is, ultimately going to be released?
Well, I firstly I agree with you, Nath. I completely resonate with the personal experience of a player that leaves a club. There isn't enough promotion specifically at the moment about the good work that happens. Unfortunately, it's just the negative experiences of a few players, but that's their own experience, and we need to do all we can to ensure that happens less frequently. So at Southampton, we're privileged to have people in so many different roles, and actually we have a life care, informal education life care officer.
Go on, what's his name? Let's hear his name.
Oh, shout out to Ian Herding.
Yeah. You've got to get Ian down here. Yeah. Go on.
And he is responsible for managing the releases of the players at professional phases, so the under 18s, and he will obviously be the first contact to ensure that the player is understanding of what the process is and what their options might be. He'll put the feelers out across all the different clubs. He'll create the dossiers and then circulate them and be the main liaison for that player between the player, the family and the clubs, and the opportunities for trials that may arise. So whether a player decides to continue playing football locally, or what, really he will fathom out what they want from this opportunity. Often it might be, no, I'm done with football, I choose education, and then we will find the contacts from our education department so that we can look at university options, courses, apprenticeships, things like that. So obviously, my team will support at that point, be present during those journeys, the trials, touching base with the players, making sure that accommodation's organised, liaising with parents, mostly just the contact with the player, if I'm honest, to ensure that they're happy with everything that's going on. And it can be a really tough time if you're not having trials as frequently as you would have thought you would have done. That's another thing that you'll have to deal with. Yeah. After a release, it can be even harder.
You know what I find hardest, actually, to be fair? Sometimes obviously it's difficult when you don't get the trial, but sometimes when you actually go on lots of trials and you get the no's, I find that's
multiple not setbacks, but multiple knocks.
Yeah.
That can be also sometimes an issue for the child, where you see them or you receive them after their fourth trial, and you can see in terms of their body language and their persona that they're going, another one, or
they're
another
deflated
trial.
It's one of the times that I have to ensure that the team are across it, because actually, whilst your focus can be the players that are playing, the release players are the ones of concern, because actually they're going through another transition that they're not used to. It's completely alien. Their identity is a footballer, so it can be a real risk time for them.
I mean, in terms of the exit strategy at your club, and I know firsthand from my experience, and having that phone call from me, and him checking in, and him saying, "I've got another one for you, mate. I've got another one for you." And I think I was impressed by that process in regards to the kind of the phone calls, the kind of the ongoing. Yeah, we know they're there, but how are they doing sort of attitude, which I thought was good.
Despite a player being released, whether they move on to another club, Premier League club, lower league club, it's still a success story. So we need to ensure that we're supporting them to get to where they need to. And obviously that doesn't just stop at the next club. We still have players that come back after they've been released and moved on to several clubs that still come back to Ian, and they want that contact with the club. What's my next opportunity? Can you just assist me with this? That support is completely ongoing. Yeah,
and that shows a strong culture, that when you've got people coming back after a negative experience has been released, and they come back, maybe not the first year, second year, but they come back third year, that shows you that obviously the culture, they're strong, they feel safe, they feel like they're going to be supported, they feel like whatever they're going through, that you guys can help. I think that's probably testament to the work you guys are doing.
There'll probably be an element of embarrassment as well, where they go, I've got to go and see the coaches that told me I wasn't good enough. Am I going to be perceived as just a not good enough person? Do you know what I mean?
There's a lot of self-judgment that goes on at that time, and actually it is people in our position, player care, Ian, that we have the types of relationships with the players where we speak freely. There's no judgment. We're not related to your technical side of things whatsoever. And that is probably the biggest, the best part of being in this role, because you're not related to the technical side of things. You don't judge them on how well they're doing. So
just talking to them,
you just be you. It's the person.
Is it easy to? I think again, when I first started out, and I did like a little pastoral work with some of the boys, and what I found difficult was having those informal conversations, and you're getting to know them, and when you have the most informal conversation or have the best relationships, that's when the information flows freely. If there's, I won't say a complaint against a coach, I won't say a complaint, but it's an issue amongst staff, against a staff member, how do you manage that information? How do you, where do you go with it? How do you deal with it?
So if a player discloses that a coach has been inappropriate?
No, not
or
inappropriate.
Like maybe used inappropriate language or something?
No, I wouldn't even go that far. I'd maybe go and say something like, I just don't think he likes me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something like that. Or, I'm just not getting opportunity
Kind
to
of
play.
gets on my nerves, you know.
when I come in the morning, Carl's always talking about it.
He gets on my nerves, you know, Carlin.
So, you know what I mean? How do you deal with that? Maybe, again, obviously, part of the safeguarding to the side, maybe it's going to be a bit more of a, I just don't think Emma, I'm not even playing. Every week, I train my hardest, I'm not playing.
Yeah.
How do you deal with something like that? That's going to be something that comes up quite a lot in academies, I think.
It happens quite a lot.
Yeah.
And obviously, I'm grateful that we're the people that they go to. And I think a lot of the conversations you have to really delve and ask the probing questions, the right questions, to ensure that you're very clear on what they mean. So is it the fact that I'm just not getting time, it's really frustrating? Or is it a specific, a personal dislike of myself? And obviously, the more you know a player, the more they'll be open to speaking to you openly about how that then develops. You keep an eye on it. And obviously, I think it's tough, because at that point you would then have to very cleverly try and gain other intelligence from elsewhere to understand and frame that situation. So it might not be that you take it as it's given.
Yeah.
You have to look into the overall behaviour of the player. Maybe ask their host, have they said the same? Does what they say to you, does that corroborate what they've just said to me? Are they frustrated at home about, no game time, what's happening, how this individuals behaving towards them, and likewise their peers. They're a squad. They can usually tell if someone's feeling a little bit off. But yeah, never take for granted anything that comes from a conversation. And actually, what you've said, Nath, is really important, to be able to kind of, if needed, escalate it, so that you actually have more than one opinion on a situation. Rather than just deciding yourself and saying no, there's not an issue there. It would be a team conversation, but obviously confidentially, I've got the feelers for this. He's mentioned this a couple of times now.
Yeah.
I think if everyone can just be mindful that we need to keep an eye on him, observe, and continue the conversations, and actually just ensure that they're okay themselves. It might just be a flippant comment at the time because they're frustrated, and it could be a completely different conversation the following week. But luckily we, would obviously share that intelligence between ourselves, and just because we all have an interest in the players, we want to make sure that they're all okay.
Yeah, I think it's tough. I think sometimes player care and pastoral and anyone that's working with the boys, not technically. I think even physios often hear a lot of those conversations as well, especially if someone's been injured for a long time or they're on the bench. So they're
traditionally, physios are the people before the growth of player care. That was the person that you probably had those kind of conversations with, where you again linked to not being playing. I'm injured. I'm not playing. I really want to get out there. I really want to play, and you kind of those frustrations where some natural conversations happen. So it's again player care. I mean, I'm a massive advocate for it in terms of the environment, because you get specific support which is great.
No, you can go to the women and girls.
Yeah, just because we've talked about it a number of times in terms of the women's and girls environment and them having a specific player care person, and the value of that person in that environment, and the growth of women's and girls football, which is great, and just seeing that there's someone in there, and I would be interested to know how many clubs have got actually a dedicated person for women's and girls. One, and also what does it look like for a player care professional in the women's and girls environment?
Yeah, definitely. I think such an exciting time, and I think again, as much as player care is growing within like a male academy setup, it's also growing within the female game, and that's what is really exciting. And obviously I'm in a really privileged position to be able to oversee it all, but another challenge for me is ensuring that that is delivered appropriately to the women's and girls. So as I mentioned, the delivery looks very different. It's speaking to that specific MD team, the manager, Marianne, Martina, to be able to understand what they would want from my team and what I would need to do to support that individual in that role, to be able to support their teams. What specifics do I need to be aware of? Because what happens with the women's and girls, the RTC and the senior teams would be very different to what would happen in the academy or first team.
Yeah.
So collating all of that information, sitting down with the staff, working out what does this look like and where would you best benefit and what type of delivery would develop these squads. So that provision basically means that ABS, player care officer, ABS, she will have contact with both the women's and girls, and then work out from there a life skills delivery. And a lot of the focus on that is dual career, dual pathway, you know, working alongside playing, ensuring that the teams feel settled and actually they have various different aspects to their life alongside training. So we really do need to put a massive push on dual pathway for that, because obviously, you know, the women's and girls, they can't rely on playing football full time. And we have, you know, mothers, full-time workers, staff that are senior members of the team, within the club. And it's Abs's role to be able to work out what would be the best delivery for them and how she can best support them. So yes, there will be the regular contact, the check-ins, presence in psychology sessions in the evening, but then more so of a focus on what kind of life skills program do we need to do to develop these players into people. Because
I mean, at first glance at it, you can just go player care. They just do exactly what the academy does, or they just do exactly what the player liaison does in terms of the first team environment. But 100%, if you dig deep to it and you get an understanding of actually there's totally different needs from that environment. I mean, it's interesting to hear about the kind of work. Somebody might be just a full-time worker and then they come in evening and training. We're expecting them to act in the same sort of way as someone in the male environment, which is interesting. But also the bubble that you are in the male environment, which is so, you don't want to say solely because it's evolving, but you do say it's heavily about the football, knowing that a lot of the young people are not going to be in football maybe longer term. So I guess there's benefits through yourself seeing the strategic overview and going, actually, we can take some of that stuff, but actually we have to leave some of the stuff because it's not right for them in that environment. But yeah, it's just interesting to hear that life skills will be looking so much different. It's not the same things. So they have the women's and girls, and they have the RTCs, the training centres. Yeah, it must be quite a huge provision. Yeah, definitely. As much as her role is casual. Yeah. Like with anyone in player care, there can be a need for more resource. The more resource you have, the more time you have to develop those players, to deliver and dedicate to the individuals, and you do what you can. How is it received, and how is it received in any of the environments in regards to? So it sounds like play care in the academy environment is well received. You've got your own sort of space. Everyone comes and knocks, joins in, talks to you, has good conversations. In the male environment, how's it received in the women's and female environment?
Really good. It's still in its infancy, but ABS has positioned herself as another pinnacle member of the MDT, and actually it's understanding where ABS as a player care individual can impact and support that team. I think that's the key to working successfully within a multidisciplinary environment, because actually if you find out where you can support those individuals, not just the players but the staff as well, so they better understand their players, so actually you're providing a provision that will develop their players as different identities as people, that giving them different opportunities in college, careers, apprenticeships, settling them, then you're only offering them a better level of support, which would mean that they play better. And that they find the whole experience a lot easier. So I guess the whole key to the player care is still underpinning in all of the squads, whether it be academy, first team, women's and girls.
Feel set to be able to perform at the best of possible.
Yeah,
that's what it is really. The link is for, I'd say, the link is for how does the player care team impact the team to perform better. That's ultimately what the first team. That's what ultimately get buy-in from the first team manager. They'll get first team. They'll get buy-in from senior board members. That's why you get investment into the player care department. That's why you're kind of blessed to have. How many staff you got? About 10.
Not enough. 4.
But that's where you're gonna get it, because you're now talking about impacting performance, impacting ultimately what's gonna kind of pay everyone's wages, really, is how well that first team does do. So that's really, really good to hear. Really good to hear.
And I mean, we've talked about this as well in regards to that kind of strategic overview, because there'll be somebody at the top going, does player care help the environment? What's it doing for the environment in regards to, is it value for money? The powers that be will always be talking about in terms of the business side of it, and what does that look like for you in terms of the kind of framework and going, this is value for money? Because and before you answer the question, in other environments they might go, we don't need to invest much in it because it's not going to change what happens on the grass.
Or they do it for audit purposes. We say, oh no, we need to have someone because legal pieces, I need to get this person in. So it's 15k, throw that into that person, and there you go. Job.
Which is a shame. Which is a shame. So how do, and this might be for people who are in the environment in Playgate, how do I show my worth? How do I go, we're not just talking to people, this is having an impact, and you can see by this, or you can see by the conversation. How does that work for you guys?
I think that's something that individuals in player care are asked all the time, as you mentioned. Prove your worth. What impact are you making? And most of the time, just saying that, the players are happy, that doesn't wash. So trying to work out how you can present, I hate saying data, but data in a way that informs those that are higher up, that this is the spread of your department, this is the way you're operating, and this is the frequency of concern, and actually the scope across all of the different squads. So trying to work out, a lot of clubs, a lot of people in player care will keep spreadsheets of regular concerns, issues, outstanding welfare concerns that will then be tied up and discussed in meetings. And obviously a lot of it is qualitative data. It's informal conversations that you then share with the supporting team. But a way in which we operate means that we can collate data through PMA. So I have worked with our PMA technician to be able to design an area where it was fit for purpose for what we needed to record, rather than using an Excel spreadsheet for everything that we do, a million spreadsheets. it took us some time to work out exactly what we needed that to look like, because obviously once you agree it, you have to use it.
Yeah.
You're all in.
Yeah.
The system, the process, it's there.
It's done.
Do it.
It's not changing. No, luckily we can. But yeah, it's just kind of trying to work out what that end product needs to be in terms of reporting or information, and working backwards. And a player can never be summarised in just data or words. But if we have to, I believe it's a mixture of both. So we have an area of PMA where it is a succession of qualitative notes on every single player based on every single interaction that my team will have with them, whether they be an under-9 or a scholar or a first team member. And then there's also the opportunity for my team to log what category that would be put under. So we got together and we worked out kind of what are the thresholds of these categories, what comprises these categories, what do we all need, so that it's an overarching overview of what player care deliver.
Yeah.
So every time the team enter something on a player, that's then logged on the date, the time. The team will then issue that it's been resolved, or if there's anything outstanding. The number of, how long the issue took, and obviously that can be kind of questionable because welfare issues do not just get solved in 5 minutes. So there has to be a lot of background information on that as well, follow-up conversations. But yeah, it is an area that at the moment works really well to be able to quantify, generate reports on frequent issues.
Do you often see links to performance in regards to, you go, Carlin, I'm seeing 4 to 5 issues, conversations, different people have logged, he's got a home issue, for example. Equally, that player is now, from a technical aspect in regards to what you might hear from the coaching staff, they're underperforming, and you go as a team, the MDT, the disciplinary team, you go, okay, there's a link there. Obviously, if we can help support that, there might be an impact on his playing performance. Do you often see that, or is it not often?
I would say the information is used for that purpose. So actually, I would want, as much as I wouldn't share the information because it's confidential.
Yeah, of course.
But I would want to share my take on anything that a member of management or a coach should be aware of should the performance on the pitch not be to the expectation. Anything that they need to be aware of that may be the reason for the impact on the pitch, I'll definitely look back and try and work out what's this succession of issues that this individual is having. And usually it will be actually the issue in performance will trigger me to then review their notes, because where I have an overview, it might take, me looking back through what's going on. This is frequent now. And actually that's the benefit to this data collection, because if things are more frequent amongst a specific age group, I'm thinking at this point, this is too frequent. We need to revisit the education on this issue, and therefore we'll then link up with Ian, provide more information on what we should be focusing on to then inform the life skills programme, to say there needs to be more education around this. Or even if it's the case that, back in the day when we were on site in the hub, that we could grab the players ourselves and be like, lads, let's talk about this.
Yeah, this
seems to be really prevalent.
People,
yeah, absolutely.
Individuals, might even be coaches, and you go, okay, that's the area of concern for this specific age group or phase or whatever, and you go, okay, let's target a life skills approach around this area.
Yeah.
So that's really good, rather than it just being ad hoc or kind of you're giving life skills because you just say it's a blanket approach where you go, we're going to give, I don't know what example, social media workshop finance, finance. You're just going, everyone gets it, everyone gets this, where you're going, actually, based on the information we have for the needs of the group, they need this. They actually need this support or this life skills, which is, that's okay.
The benefit to it is that I can use the information from the older squads. So the first team, that'll inform what gets delivered to the B team. The B team, the independent living stuff, what are they really, really struggling with right now? What do I need to maybe be a bit more proactive about with that delivery? What are they struggling with?
Lots of complaints about food. Okay, we need to do
exactly.
a foodie thing. Whatever that might be. We need to do a foodie thing.
So then if we go, Carl, into like host families now. So I'm linking host families and linking with working with parents. So if I go host families first, you guys at Southampton have had like a massive provision, probably one of the biggest in the Premier League. There'll be other professionals within the academy space. There'll be people that are not in academy football but interested in host families and how that looks and what that looks like. Could you give us a bit of a breakdown in regards to your experience of host families and maybe share good practice? Again, we spoke to Sue on the last series, and again, sometimes with the host families, I feel, and I read something, I want to say it was, I don't want to quote it in case someone comes back for me, but they were saying that the children leave their families and go to host families, and it was quite a quite like no processes, and you just take them to a home and you just say hello, there's your new family. Get on. So can you give us a bit of your background in terms of host families and what that looks like?
So as you said, host families are my thing. I looked after the host family provision for many years when I worked in the academy. As you said, we have, and I believe we still do have, the largest host family provision in the Premier League. So that number has fluctuated, especially now during COVID times, sadly. But our position in the country means that we have to have a larger provision to be able to accommodate and support players coming into training. So the initial recruitment of a host family is so rigorous, and actually whilst we speak about player care not really having a framework, the one thing that I oversee in player care that has the biggest structural framework, process driven, will be the recruitment of every host family. That process is led by my academy team, Tressa and Luke. Shout out to them. Tress and Luke. And they are excellent. They are an absolute tag team. They have the process down. So much paperwork, absolute paperwork overload. And actually that can be the hard thing when you're working in a role that means that you're constantly striving for the next player contact, trying to have those conversations, but then also trying to keep up with paperwork to remain in line with Premier League expectation of recruitment, DBSs, references, all of that. We have so much paperwork that is linked to the recruitment of one host family. That process probably takes up into about 3 months for one host family. The safeguarding team, which we work really closely with, are aligned with everything we do. So actually the team, the initial visit, the second visit will be by the safeguarding team, and then the third visit to a potential host will be from an independent, so potentially me, or either another member of the player care team. So there's 3 points of view on every individual that is applied to be a host family. I might have a bad feeling about, a home, and actually if one person has a bad feeling, we don't proceed. And we all bring different aspects to that decision in terms of, environment, safeguarding perspective, and also Tressa as a mother, what would she expect? And where would she want to put her children, much like Sue had touched on when you spoke to her. That's really important, really, really important. Something that I can't bring to the table because I don't have children. But when I'm saying to a parent, this is the best option for your child, it's not something that's done lightly. It's done through a player placement form where actually we match the player based on the information we collate on that form to the family. We create host family dossiers where we can circulate them. These are the best options for your son. What are your thoughts? And also within that placement form, we try and work out what would be the best environment for the player to settle. So whether that's us identifying fears, aversions, would they prefer to live with another player? Would they prefer to live on their own? Even to the extent of asking their favourite meals. How can we best integrate this young person into this household so that they settle as quickly and it does become a home from home. The process, you know, is so extensive, and it is something that we really do dedicate our time to, because that integration, that induction for an academy player is so poignant to the rest of their journey, to the rest of their time at Southampton. That will be the first instance of how they interpret the club.
Yeah.
So we ensure that we put as much attention to detail as we can do, and actually that will include quarterly meetings with the player care team once a player is in host family, one further visit from the safeguarding team, which will mean they'll take the time to visit the property, check out the physical environment. Likewise, the team with the hub will be able to have aligned conversations with the player. Are you happy? How are things going? But then we also review quarterly every host family in terms of audit, and that's something that I have implemented in terms of best practice, because whilst you can have conversations with the host and then separate conversations with the player, it's also a team conversation to say, how do you view these people? Have there been any concerns in the last, 4 months? Is there anything that we would change about them, or should we be working to a more gold standard? And that sounds really unfair, but actually it's good to be having those conversations to make sure that we're always evolving, and always actually it's our duty to upskill our hosts, because they're fantastic people that open their homes.
I was going to say, what does that look like in regards to upskilling hosts? Do they have to do training? Do they come in and do workshops?
Yeah, definitely. So as much as I'm saying, that audit isn't just for us to kind of work out what's best for the players, what's best for the hosts. We need to make sure that we're developing them also aligned with the players, so upskilling them on and keeping them involved in what the boys are doing. If we're delivering a mental health workshop to the players, then we would want to deliver something that would aid the host to be able to support the players with the information that they've just taken on. Again, nutrition. We keep them up to date on Hive. I don't know if you've heard of Hive.
Yeah, we've heard of Hive.
We try and, I think everyone has, try and create like a community. They are encompassed in the club, and one of the most
That's
important...
quite a good use of Hive, to be fair.
Yeah.
Getting the host families on there, and then they can pop things on there.
Definitely. It's a quicker way to communicate with them. You know, our phones are always on. Anytime we have to be there to be able to support the host, because they're the ones that are supporting the players, and using Hive will hopefully create more of a family community amongst themselves. If there's something that they don't want to ask Tress or myself or the team, they can ask each other. They support each other, really, and good. They're excellent. And actually, I guess a lot of that kind of seeking for gold standard will just mean that we're making sure that no one is becoming complacent in the delivery, and we're always doing the best for the player. And it might just take a bit of upskilling to think, as part of their development also, they need to be on board with allowing them to use their kitchens, and that can be quite daunting.
Washing
machines.
Yeah, that is a part of it.
No one wants a broken washing machine from a 16-year-old.
Yeah, that is a part of it. That whole life skill approach, where they get real life skills, where they go, do you know what? I got to wash some clothes now. I might even cook a meal for one evening a week or whatever. Exactly,
with the first team stuff that I mentioned before, we have to be responsible for developing those academy players for the things that they would normally be doing at home in a normal environment with their parents. So we might have them 6 nights a week. So we have to encourage hosts to give them the freedom to try and learn for themselves as well. And actually, some players might need a bit more encouragement than others.
Yeah, of course.
Please make your bed.
Of course.
But we aim to do that. And actually, life skills doesn't just mean, as you said, like a blanket delivery. It means identifying what the needs are of that person. Some are more capable than others. But what will he need when he's not in a host family? When I'm expecting him to adapt to independent living immediately.
Yeah, which is like the same kind of transition where you go from academy, where you got loads of kind of professionals around you. You go to the first team. There's still loads of professionals, but not in that kind of wholesome, supportive nature. It's kind of like, we're here to do a job sort of thing. You're treated as grown adults. So yeah, it's again really interesting.
And how do you then work with parents? Because again, we've been on this clubhouse thing, and parents will often say, especially when they get to probably the scholarship age groups, maybe not so much 15s and 16s and below, but when they get to that scholarship age group, it's like, I don't know anything. I just, what's going on?
They don't speak to me.
So how do you work with them? Yeah.
Well, again, we're lucky enough to be involved in every single player induction. So as an academy, we do a full new season academy induction for all the players.
Okay, yeah.
But throughout the season, if there is a recruited player, Tressa, the player care officer, will be present with the academy manager and the assistant academy manager, welcoming the player with their parent on their trial. Yeah. And then at the point where obviously they decide to join Southampton, she will be one of the familiar faces that player will be able to rely on. She'll provide the information, and actually, as much as a parent will be excited that a player's just been signed at Southampton, their son's just been signed at Southampton, probably what I gauge most of the time from my interactions with parents is that they just want to know that their son is being looked after.
Yeah.
And what are you going to do to ensure that when he's with you, that he's happy? I think it's the reassurance to know that we take every interest in them as an individual. And I guess the whole process of meeting with the player, getting the player placement information, talking to the parent, how best can we integrate him, having those initial conversations before they even step foot on their first day at the club, provides the parent with a familiarity with the player care team, where actually you do become their main liaison.
Yeah.
Between the information that gets circulated between them, their son, and the rest of the staff. So you build up that relationship from the very first day where you request that form and that information. We also do presentations at real poignant times of transition. So we've just delivered to the under-16s that will be joining us in the new season as scholars. That delivery is to them and their parents. We are then following up to offer a one-to-one with every parent, every player, to talk through the player placement form.
Yeah.
Because I think forms are all well and good, but it's only as good as much as is disclosed on that form, and actually conversations to understand how the player is, how open are they introvert? A parent will more than likely tell you more information on a one-to-one basis.
Because they want that support, want to ensure that so you can get that support.
Exactly.
Yeah, no.
So it's ongoing, really. The conversations continue to happen, and actually the player care staff do tend to be the first port of call for any concern or worry, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're concerned about something from a welfare perspective. It will be just them gauging an opinion on sometimes technical stuff, dates. You will literally be the person that they will pick up the phone to, because they probably don't have that relationship with another individual that might have the information they need. But actually, I welcome that.
Yeah.
Because
how's that perceived with? Because obviously, you guys become the source of information. Is that? How does that coaching dynamics work? Where do they coaches go, great? You don't. I could talk less to the parents.
Yeah, the parents not ringing them at 9 o'clock
exactly.
at night.
Oh,
it's
great. You guys do that. Or do you have some coaches who kind of go, well, we like to do that.
Yeah, I think it differs from coach to coach. There will be a lot of parents that will find solace in speaking to the player care team rather than the coach, because obviously if you're a parent and you are commenting on minutes, playtime, things where actually rightly or wrongly you should or shouldn't have an opinion on, because you are the parent. You're emotionally attached to that child.
Yeah, of course.
I think sometimes we are the sounding board.
Yeah, you can buffer it.
We can buffer it.
Yeah.
And then likewise, I'm more than happy to then go and have a conversation with the coach to be like, what do you think?
Yeah.
And then to go back to the parent to say, look, this is what's going on. Is very matter of fact. But luckily, the coaches are great. They will happily take calls from parents, actually. I'm really pleased to say that it's not all us. But the opportunity for review with parents is so frequent that it's rare that a parent will have a real big issue not understanding what's going on with their child, because the reviews are so frequent as they're delivered through the academy with all the staff that will input and then delivered through the coach. So it'll only be the day-to-day stuff that might crop up. And actually right now in this environment, it's more so the concern over how their son is dealing with the COVID situation. Yeah. So all I need to do and all my team need to do is offer that reassurance to know that our phones are on all the time. I was going to say our doors are open. We're not seeing people. Our phones are on all the time. If you have a worry,
Zoom's on all the time.
Zoom is on all the time. We're all going to be teams. Yeah. But yeah, so basically now more so than ever, I think it's more of a welfare, well-being conversation that we're having with parents to reassure them that we're there. Everyone is there, not just my team. We understand this situation is really challenging, and actually we want the players to understand why we need to make decisions in terms of protocols to keep them safe. And yeah, basically just the reassurance to know that you're keeping the player safe. Likewise, reassuring the parent that everything's okay. And if they do have a concern, they'll air it. You'll know.
They sure will. You'll get that call, don't worry about that. But what I hear from it anyway, Carlin and Em, is that you're supporting parents, you're supporting players, you're supporting coaches. And I think maybe player care might be not the right name. It should be maybe just care. Just people care. Do you know what I mean?
People care.
It's very a caring place, Southampton. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of individualisation. It's not just a blanket approach. There's a lot of thought and I'd say even emotion and love behind what you guys are doing. And it's not just a job. It's more of a vocation. You guys are in it to obviously help those young people, help the coaches, help everyone for what is essentially a business environment, and you're just trying to make sure that it's going to be as pleasant as possible.
No, I do agree. I think just hearing some of the stuff and listening to that, it's definitely embedded in the culture. I think that sits with me as well in terms of just making sure that the culture just, and it just works on its own. It doesn't, you don't have to be there stomping around going, remember, play kids, remember. You're kind of you can watch it just organically and just naturally just work because of all the good work that's been happening. No, really good.
So what we do, to finish on the show, we just ask maybe like a couple of questions in regards to a piece of advice that you would give, some people. So if we start off and I said, there's a young person, or it could be an old person to be fair, a person that wants to be involved in player care. So they've seen a few jobs go out. What advice would you give that person in regards to coming in to join a player care department within football?
It's a really good question. I get asked quite frequently, but I'm terrible on LinkedIn, so this is my apology to everyone that I've never replied to. It's interesting because obviously my journey is so different to the journeys of those that I speak to in the similar roles to myself. I think the best advice I can give you is actually there is no set pathway to get into a role in player care. For me, it was very circumstantial because I had finished university with a degree in psychology. I had then moved on to being a lettings manager and applied for a job at Southampton that I didn't really understand what it was, but I could do the administration side and the property maintenance side, and the welfare side came naturally and my skill set grew. I think the biggest thing that I resonate with when people apply for player care roles is their intention and their authenticity. I don't think you have to have qualifications to work in player care. I think you have to have a softer skill set, high emotional intelligence and empathy, an interest in people and the ability to be flexible.
Yeah.
I never think that there would be something that would be so regimented that it would stop you from being able to get a role in player care. And actually, when I interview candidates, as much as, you know, a job advertisement might suggest an expectation in a qualification, that wouldn't stop me. What really interests me is a good cover letter where an individual just has the drive and motivation to want to strive and look after people.
Yeah.
I think, you know, when you speak to people, that comes across quite quickly, whether they're able to be flexible enough and really have the motivation to do the best for another person.
Yeah.
That's
a really good answer, isn't it?
That's a good answer.
I don't want to ask another question, though.
I've got a question probably to finish. I'm thinking about from the flip side of it, in terms of the young person, if what advice would you give a young person wanting to speak to player care? What would you say to them?
I would say, in everything player care related, my biggest emphasis would be, if you don't want to speak to someone in player care, speak to someone. I would love it to be player care, but as long as they're speaking to someone. And actually, for a young person that struggles to communicate, try and be more open to the opportunity to either speak to a teammate or your parent, or even someone that you don't know at all. If you're conscientious about being judged, try and find that outlet somewhere. I would always hope that there would be someone that a young person would be open to speaking to, and whether that be player care, the physio, the parent, the grandparent, the friend. Right now, that's so important that people are just speaking.
Cool. Another good answer. Another good answer. I guess this is a thank you part. Really loved hearing what you're talking about and all the good work that was going on through yourself and your ever-growing team.
All my name drops.
Yeah. Everyone's in there. So no, really thank you. It's great stuff. Hopefully it continues to grow and you can continue to be an advocate for the good work in supporting young people and old people. It sounds like everyone in regards to the environment. So no, really good.